Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Please subscribe and keep watching more details. Chicago Fire Season 13, Episode 11 Recap and Review. In the Trenches Part I. The One Chicago 2025 crossover event kicked off with an episode of Chicago Fire. It made sense with a major call being the thing that would pull the three shows together. We're breaking the crossover down in 3 parts. Here's the recap for Chicago Fire Season 13, Episode 11. Just as a note, I'll recap Chicago Fire and Chicago Med here. You can get my Chicago PD coverage over on Precinct TV. I'll include the link to make it easier. The episode kicks off with Kid and Severide talking about plans for the long weekend, and then jumps to Mouch sharing that he's going to have to make it up to Trudy when he didn't return home so he could keep up with the other future lieutenants. It was clear future hoping that may not play out considering the promo told us that Kid and Trudy's lives would both end up on the line. Now for the event. A large gas explosion didn't just call Firehouse 51 to the scene. Multiple units were being called out, and Ritter couldn't help but note that they were all being called to a government building. There is some talk about how such an explosion happened. There should have been safety measures in place. I get the feeling that this is going to set up Intelligence's storyline. We do get to see Trudy at work in the action. It does look a little like she's angry at Mouch for the night before. But I also think that she just needs to focus on the emergency. This is much bigger than anyone thought when initially getting the call. Let's give Trudy some slack. Well, it turns out that Trudy had a reason to be angry with Mouch. The reason Trudy wanted Mouch home wasn't because she wanted to celebrate his promotion. It was her birthday and he completely forgot. Chief Pascal takes control of the situation. I do wish that we could have seen Bowden back for this crossover event, but I do appreciate how focused Pascal is on the entire situation. He is concerned about another explosion, and decides to take control of shutting the gas off. The point is under rubble, but there's another leak and the gas workers want to go to the next point. They don't have 10 minutes, so Pascal gets his team over to handle it instead. Outside of the building, Violet took control of the Triage system. It's a standard procedure when it comes to these big emergencies. Those who have smaller wounds will go on the green, but those who need immediate treatment go on the red. Officer Bates, who is now a security guard, is angry that her friend isn't being treated. She views it as people caring more about the suits rather than others, but that's not the case. Violet isn't going to argue with anyone though. It's Frost, who didn't make the best first impression by being late and then working on the ambulance, who proves that he is respectful. He goes to see the patient who Violet has deemed as green in Triage and says that he agrees. He's a doctor, but Violet is the one in charge. I hate that he had to go up to shut Bates up, but I'm glad he didn't even argue about Violet's decision. Violet is cool and calm under pressure. She was made for this job. She does it with coolness and kindness, which isn't always easy to do when under pressure. Frost also shows how much he cares for people. When a young girl is looking for her mom, and we all know she's somewhere in the building, he helps her find someone to help her. Herman and Severide head through the building to clear it. They end up in a computer hardware room, and Severide soon realizes that this was the point the explosion started. It doesn't take long for him to realize that there's something fishy going on. Someone tampered with some fuses. Then Herman finds something else that makes it clear it was Arson. There's an oxygen tank in the room. Someone wanted to wipe the server room and get rid of it. It's the guy who was sent to Med for the shoulder injury. This certainly pulls intelligence into the whole thing as now there's a criminal investigation to start. What's interesting is that Voight is quick to support Severide when Ruzek can't find proof that anyone went into the server room on the cameras. After everything that has gone on between Voight and Severide in the past, I adore that Voight was quick to believe Severide. He knows the lieutenant. However, it's clear that it's not the guy at Med. While he was panicked, he wasn't there because of the oxygen tank. He was going down because there were some drives with $250,000 that weren't backed up to storage. People definitely went down there though. 2 armed suspects ended up trapped and nearly shoot Severide when he gets them out of a locker they were trapped in. We knew Trudy would be injured in the crossover event, and it took 40 minutes into the episode to find out what happened to her. She went down to help Ruzek and Bates catch the guys. She even gets to one, but she lets her guard down believing that they had split up. The guy's partner was behind her and shot her 3 times in the back. This is so much worse than I expected for Trudy. And now Mouch has to live with knowing that she was angry at him and hurt because he forgot her birthday. Ruzek tries to get to Trudy, but he ends up running into the suspects, so he chases one of them down the tunnel to the subway car. It's up to Mouch to find Trudy, with Herman and Severide going with him. Mouch gets to Trudy and gets to Med. We know that Ked and Ruzek end up in a subway car in the One Chicago 2025 crossover event. Now we get to find out why. There's a car stuck underground, so Kid decides that she can take a team down there to help. This time they're masking up though. Did those on set remember that they're walking into a potentially toxic situation, unlike when they headed to the training facility in the previous episode? This sets up a storyline for Kid being trapped in the car though. The oxygen levels through the tunnel are dropping considerably, and there's no people will get through with so little oxygen. We also hear that the radios aren't working properly due to interference, which explains why later nobody will be able to get through to Kid. There's also the threat of the tunnel collapsing over the top of the subway car. The foundation around the building is collapsing, and that means everything is even more of a risk. Initially, Carver and Kid tried to get people out of the subway, but as a brick falls and hits one of the passengers, Kid realizes that those on the train should remain there. It's the safest spot. And this is how Kid ends up remaining on the subway, with Ruzek who is chasing the guy in the jumpsuit, and Carver ends up back up top as he gets the people off the car to safety. Carver does initially go down, but the ground starts to collapse. There's no way to get to Kid. Trudy crashes while at Med and Severide rushes down to the tunnel with Cap and Tony only to find it completely blocked off. That's where the Chicago Fire episode leaves us. It's time to turn our attention to Chicago Med to continue the One Chicago 2025 crossover event. Chicago Fire returns with a gripping, high-stakes episode that leaves fans on the edge of their seats. Season 13, Episode 11, titled In the Trenches Part I, marks the first installment of a 2-part event that pushes Firehouse 51 to its limits. With intense action, emotional reckonings, and shocking developments, this episode sets the stage for a dramatic conclusion. Let's break down the key moments and discuss what worked, and what left us gasping for air. Recap. A call that changes everything. The episode kicks off with a quiet morning at Firehouse 51, at least as quiet as it ever gets. Kid, Miranda Ray Mayo, is briefing the squad on a new set of response protocols, and Bowden, Eamon Walker, senses that something big is coming. That moment arrives when a mayday call comes in from another firehouse. Squad 6, responding to a factory explosion on the city's south side, is trapped inside the collapsing building, and 51 is the closest unit available to assist. Severide, Taylor Kinney, wastes no time suiting up, his instincts immediately kicking in. It's clear from the start that this isn't going to be an ordinary call. The factory is massive, its structure compromised by multiple gas leaks and electrical fires. Upon arrival, Firehouse 51 finds members of Squad 6 scattered, injured, and buried beneath wreckage. The situation is dire, and the team quickly splits up to rescue survivors. Cruz, Joe Minoso, and Gallo, Alberto Rosend, navigate a labyrinth of fallen beams to find 2 trapped firefighters, one unconscious and the other barely breathing. Meanwhile, Kid and Carver, Jake Lockett, work frantically to secure an unstable section of the building to prevent further collapses.